Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made for a Punched Out Thursday to Die For and for Christie's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches, Day 23. Now the reason that I am putting Days 23 sketch out today is because this layout was supposed to be for last week's Punched Out Thursday to Die For. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of a family emergency. Everything is just fine now, and I never got a chance to voice over this video, and then I just had to catch up on a few things, and so I finally decided that I would just use this video for this week's Punched Out Thursday to Die For. So I'm using two photos of my younger daughter, Julia. We were at my older daughter, Danielle's college bookstore, and she was trying on one of the hats. And when I looked at these pictures, I was thinking that I had a sheet of paper that was just the right color scheme. And so I looked through my stash and I found this piece of paper. It is from a kit club that I was a member of many years ago called Storytellers Club. It's not in existence anymore, but I really enjoyed the papers that I got from Storytellers Club, and so I still have quite a few papers. I think they're very original, and I really like this paper. I have a couple of sheets of it. I really like the B side of this paper, but I didn't want to use a whole other piece of paper. I wanted to save these pattern papers for other layouts that I do for my older daughter at college, and then I sometimes use these papers for sports themed pages, so I didn't want to use a whole sheet of paper just for the B side. So you might have seen earlier, I cut out the paper that's behind the large 4x6 photo, and now I'm using that to cover this strip of paper just where it's going to show. And that way I don't waste any of that black paper, but it looks like, of course, the whole strip is black. I needed some other papers to use on the layout, so I went into my folder of black pattern papers and I pulled out a black paper with a white dot, and you could see that on the left hand side of the layout right now. I'm going to be using that paper. I also cut out some tags to go along with the sketch, and for those tags I used a paper from the So Rad collection from Simple Stories. That's an older collection, and it has hints of orange on it, which I thought would go really well with the orange that's already on the layout, but then it's a lighter color background, so I like that idea for the tags. I used some Distress Oxide in black soot to ink the edges of the black pattern paper, and that's because you could see the white paper that's underneath it from the side, and so I am layering that now underneath the two photos. Sometimes I find these types of layouts where there's a lot of layering of paper underneath the photos, usually just when it's a sketch. If I'm using my own composition, it's not as hard, but when there's a sketch and there's a lot of layered pieces that go behind the photos, I tend to struggle a little bit with getting everything lined up just the way I want it. I inked the edges of the tag that I punched out as well, and you could see that I didn't have a ton of that paper, so I just punched out a small tag, just the part that was going to show for the lower right hand corner. Now I'm using that dotted black and white paper and I'm inking the edges of that as well. I ended up inking all of the pattern paper and some of the embellishments just because I wanted everything to coordinate. Now I'm placing that larger piece of pattern paper behind the photos, and now I'm going to attach that 4x4 photo down to the layout. Now I'm happy I have all of the large pieces of paper and the photos attached down to the layout, and I'm happy with the positioning of everything. I'm going to add some more layers, although they're not really layers. I'm just adding smaller pieces of paper to look like layers. As you know, I don't have a lot of that black paper with the stars on it, so I'm just piecing it together, and I use my T-square just to make sure that everything looks straight and lined up correctly. I wanted to include some photo corners. I'm using an EK Success scalped photo corner punch, and I'm using some little tiny scraps of orange paper. Because those little tiny scraps are hard to manipulate, I'm attaching them to a larger strip of paper, and I find that that could be helpful when using punches with tiny pieces of paper. So I have to really work hard at it, but I was able to get 4 photo corners punched out of that orange paper. And then I thought I would use the leftover orange paper and I would place a strip underneath that black starred piece of pattern paper that I attached earlier. I inked the edges of the 4 photo corners and then I used some of my ATG adhesive and I attached them down to the photos. I ended up getting a lot of use out of that piece of paper that I cut out from behind the 4x6-inch photo. I also had the option of cutting out the paper behind the smaller photo, but I didn't end up needing to do that. But that's another way that I could have gotten a little bit of extra paper. And these photos were taken in 2015. I can't believe how many years ago this is now that my older daughter was starting college. It seems like a lifetime ago. And I remember we were so excited that she got into the college that she wanted to go to. We were buying all kinds of shirts and hats, and I was just really happy for her because there was really just one school she wanted to go to. And so we were very relieved when she got into it. And then since then, she's changed her mind about what she wants to do for a living, and she's getting her graduate degree now, and a lot of things have changed. But I do remember these years when she was 5 hours away as being very, very difficult for me because I missed her so much. Now she's going to school, but she's living at home, which I'm very happy about. For embellishments for this layout, I'm using the ephemera pack for the So Rad collection. So I thought that this little ephemera piece that says So Rad or hashtag So Rad would be a nice addition to the page. It worked out with the color scheme. The star to the left of the large photo, that is from the Storyteller Club kit that this paper came with. And there were also some gears and stars that were in the So Rad ephemera pack. So I'm putting a couple of those around the layout. And earlier I had to piece together a little bit of that black paper that is below the 4x6-inch photo. So I want to put a star over the seam of the paper there. And then I'm using my We Are Memory Keepers punch, that circular punch with a hole in the middle, which is perfect for adding a little reinforcer to the tags. And I'm using some black cardstock to match the rest of the layout. As I said earlier, I ink the edges of pretty much everything that goes on the page. Not everything, but mostly everything with the Distress Oxide in black soot. Then I decided that I wanted to mount the So Rad ephemera piece on some cardstock. So I'm using some black cardstock and I attach it down to the black cardstock. And now I'm using my scissors and trying to cut the corners rounded on the black cardstock the same way that the ephemera piece has rounded corners. And I think that ephemera piece looks better mounted on the black cardstock than it did without anything underneath it. But later on I go back and I change it. So it's the next day, and a lot of times I will notice something that doesn't look quite right when I go back to the layout the next day. I talk about that all the time. I really find it very refreshing to take a break and then go back and look at the layout again. And then a lot of times the things that I'm not crazy about will jump right out at me, and I usually start switching things around. So one of the things that I noticed was that the black strip going down the center wasn't really visible, especially on the bottom, because there is a black background behind it. So I thought that putting some white cardstock behind it would help it be a little bit more visible. And you could see that I didn't cut out one large strip. I just pieced some smaller pieces of white paper behind it, and that way I didn't have to pull up everything from the page. I'm working on my title now, which is R.I.T. Spirit. I cut out some large letters, twice in white and once in black, and I layered the 2 white layers on top of each other, and then I put the black at a slight offset in the background just to help the letters stand out a little bit. To make the word spirit, I used some Felicity Jane puffy letter stickers. I mounted them on some black cardstock. I center them under the letters R.I.T. and then I add an embellishment from that same ephemera pack to the left of the word spirit. So now I'm fooling around with that hashtag So Rad ephemera piece again. I decided that it would look better on some white cardstock. I also thought that the white cardstock would help balance off the white in the title. I have the 2 photos that are on a diagonal from each other, and then the title will be on a diagonal with this ephemera piece. So I just thought that it kind of helped to tie everything together to make it mounted in white. And I thought that I could use a corner rounder to help round the cardstock behind the ephemera piece, but the cardstock was a little bit too thick for my corner rounder, so I ended up just using scissors, and that worked out just fine to make that curve. And for some reason I got that corner rounder to cut the first cut, but then it would not cut any of the other corners. I'm going to be adding some white and black enamel dots to the layout. I use some of the white dots on some of the stars, and then I also use them between each of the three letters, R-I-T, and then I use some of the black enamel dots as well. And I put the smallest size on two of those stars that are on the layout, and then I added some twine to both of the tags. It looks like on this layout I didn't have to cut the twine shorter, but something that I've started doing is just leaving the twine very long and then cutting it shorter later if I have to, because sometimes I find that I'll cut the twine too short because I don't want to waste it, and then I have to end up using two pieces because I have to do it twice. So now I'm leaving it a little bit longer, and then, like I said, trimming it if that has to be done. I added a couple of enamel dots to the photo corners. And then because I have this big hole in the back of my layout, I thought it would be best to cover the back of the layout with one piece of paper. So I cut this paper a little bit smaller than 12 by 12 inches, and I layered it on the back, and now the layout is complete. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Here are some close-ups of the layout. I really appreciate your taking the time to watch this video and spend some time with me today. Please take a look in the description box. You'll find links to the channels of Sonia, Dorothy, Kathy, and Ronnie Sue, who also make layouts for a Punched Out Thursday to Die For, and then also check out the Best of 30 Days of Sketches playlist. Have a fantastic day, everybody, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.